Now here's a third type of storage you can attach onto an EC2 instance, and this is a network file system, or NFS. So EFS stands for Elastic File System, and it is a managed network file system, and the idea and the benefit of it is that it can be mounted to hundreds of EC2 instances at a time. So before we had an EBS volume attached to only one EC2 instance at a time, but with an EFS drive, you can mount it onto hundreds of EC2 instances. So that makes it a shared network file system, or shared NFS. So EFS works only with your Linux EC2 instances, and on top of it, it works across multiple availability zones. So it is possible for an instance in one AZ to be attaching the same EFS volume as the instance in another AZ. Now, EFS is highly available, scalable, pretty expensive. It's about 3 times the price of a GP2 EBS volume, but you pay per use and you don't plan for capacity. So that means that if you store 20 gigabytes of data onto your EFS drive, then you're only going to pay for these 20 gigabytes. So if you look at the diagram, this is very easy. We have an EFS file system with a security group, and then we have EC2 instances in various availability zones connected to it. So we have EC2 instances in US East 1A, EC2 instances in US East 1B, as well as EC2 instances in US East 1C, and they're all connected to the same EFS file system. So now let's outline the exact differences between EBS and EFS. So with EBS, say we had an EC2 instance in one AZ and another one, then the EBS volume can only be attached to one instance in one specific AZ, and the EBS volumes are bound to a specific availability zones. But if we wanted to move over the EBS volume from one AZ to another, we could create a snapshot, and we create an EBS snapshot, and then restore that snapshot into a new availability zone, and effectively we would have moved the EBS volume over. But this is a copy, okay? This is not an in-sync replica, this is a copy, and that would mean that this drive can now be used by another EC2 instance. EFS is a network file system. That means that whatever is on the EFS drive is shared by everything that is mounted to it. So what does that mean? Say we have many instances in availability zone 1, or many instances as well on availability zone 2. At the same time, all these instances can mount the same EFS drive, okay, using a mount target, and they will all see the same files. So that makes it a shared file system. So hopefully that makes it a very easy way to understand the difference between EBS and EFS, and this is something that the exam will test you on. There is a storage class you need to know for EFS, and it's called EFS Infrequent Access, or EFS IA. So it's a storage class that is going to be cost optimized for files that you don't access very often. So for example, you don't access these files every day. And this storage class will give you up to 92% lower cost for storing the data compared to the other storage class, which is called EFS Standard. And if you enable EFS IA, then EFS will automatically move your files to EFS IA based on the last times they were accessed and something called a lifecycle policy. So let's take an example. We have our EFS file system. We have 3 files in EFS Standard and maybe a 4th file in EFS Standard. This one hasn't been accessed for 60 days. That means that no one has read this file and no one has been writing to this file either, right? So if you define your lifecycle policy and you enable EFS IA, then for example, you can say, hey, after 60 days, please move this file to a different storage class, which is called EFS IA, which is going to have some cost saving. And this is going to be done automatically. Now, next time you access this file, it's going to be put back into EFS Standard because it's more accessed more often, right? So the idea is that this is a cost-saving optimization. And from an application perspective, there is really no drawbacks. It's very transparent to the applications. I mean that your applications don't even need to know where the file is. If it's an EFS Standard or EFS IA, it will access all these files the same way. It's just behind the scenes, EFS will do some cost optimizations. So something to need to know going to the exam. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.